Hello and welcome to the DM's Book Club, a podcast where we read about some Dungeons and Dragons and discuss how I might include it in our role-playing campaigns, with me bobbing along silently to no music and doing some very interesting, let's say, early millennial dance moves is my good friend Rob. Rob, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, thank you. I was doing some TikTok dancing.
Was that TikTok? Oh, well, that shows about what I know.
I think so. You do these things and you discuss.
Fingers.
Yeah, you answer questions and you say, why should we not say these things and stuff? And
yeah, you use your hand across the thing, going boom, boom, boom. You're like,
yeah.
Could you imagine if we did voiceover PowerPoints or presentations at conferences where it was just TikTok dancing, but also giving our points?
So imagine that's how I got my job.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, just pointing at UCAS data. I am very good, thank you. My voice is a little bit raspy today because I was shouting at an arcade for 8 hours. But no, I'm good. I'm ready to go. We've not talked about D&D for weeks.
Weeks. I know. Because we've done different campaign settings, so we've really gone a deep dive. And then for today, you suggested this much shorter module from first edition. And I was like, that sounds really interesting. Let's check that out. So Rob, would you like to introduce our topic for today?
Yeah, sure. So this is a module that I never came across before. I saw it because on the very excellent Vintage RPG, all one word, Instagram account, this guy posts just images of modules, games from back in the day, really interesting stuff. And it's just that he gives a little snippet. And this was one that he put up, never seen it before, called Treasure Hunt from 1986, written by Aaron Alston, which is a name I've not come across before. But this took my fancy because it's presented as a starter adventure.
Yep.
But an actual starter adventure, because you've had the classics like Keeping the Borderlands and stuff like that, which aren't actually very good starter adventures, or Temple of the Frog, which we mentioned. This, however, is 4 characters level 0 to 1. And that is a concept I'm familiar with, a level 0 character through the DCC game, Dungeon Crawl Classics.
Yeah. We've covered that before on DM's Book Club. We had our friend Craig come on and very kindly gifted me a massive, beautiful tome of it. It's something you would keep a door open with if you were like, I don't have anything to hand. It's massive and beautiful.
But that has the idea of the funnel system, where to character creation, it's one of my favourite character creation systems, you randomly generate 3 to 4 characters at level 0, and they are going to be by level 0. That means they've not become an adventurer yet. They're a baker, they're a candlestick maker, they're the other one, butcher. That was it.
Yeah. The least wanted of the
least wanted of the three. Everyone needs candlesticks. It's a dungeon, and you go as a posse basically into a dungeon because there's a problem, say, and you're going to get murdered. It's called a funnel system, funnel adventure. You will lose probably 90% of the characters, and if any of them come out standing at the end of it, at the end of their level 0 game, they become your level 1 character, and you start a D&D adventure from there. And I thought that was a new thing. I had never encountered that before. I thought that was invented by Dungeon Crawl Classics, but then in 1986, we've got this.
Yeah.
Treasure Hunt with level 0 characters. And it is, a truly how to play, no, not how to play, but here is an adventure to run, and it's for new players and it's for new GMs, and that's very important. It's not just, it is designed for, you've got into this D&D thing because of that weird Hellfire Club at school, but you don't know what to do. Well, here you go. Here's, and not only for the players, but here you go, DM, this is what an adventure will look like if you buy one, and here is a whole mess of tips and advice and things to do in a very conversational style.
Yeah, it felt very friendly, like you were asking somebody, like, what happens if they do this? And they don't listen to the book. And it goes, just look at the appendix and then go through it there. But you're right. I think it's so conversational. It sort of like winds around the point, and eventually you get there and you're like, so you just needed to say that last paragraph then.
Yeah, very much so. You could have just said, it's the kind of book which nowadays I think you'd have lots of box outs.
Yes, just to make it clear.
What if this doesn't happen? What if this doesn't happen? Or who is this? But it's an easy read. Considering the other stuff we've been through, was actually a very easy read.
It's sort of split up into sort of 6 episodic things. And it does the sort of classic thing, you get shipwrecked, there's a temple, there's a manor house, and there's a dungeon. So it hits various staples, which is great. There's a very cool thing with the maps, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a second. But it just felt like it's very cool. But like if you're level 0, you don't have much health, you don't have much of anything. I think you have 6 health or something. I'll roll maximum, a d6. Maximum.
If you roll a 6.
And whilst there isn't as many random encounters and stuff, there are things out there that can easily kill you. And it talks about what do you do if somebody dies? But he does say, and it's a slight spoiler, if you get to a certain point, there is no more chances, no more thing. And you're like, that sucks.
Yeah, particularly when there's no reason for not being able to have another character join you and just get filled in quickly. But that's the old school style of also. Which I never liked. I don't understand what you do if you went round to your friend's house for 3 hours and you died in the first hour. What do you do?
Yeah, it's a bit like those social deduction games when you're out in the first round and you have to wait another half an hour before
God, Werewolf's rubbish. Stop playing Werewolf.
See, I really enjoy Werewolf because it gets very tense. And then as soon as you're out, you're like, well, this is it. I'll do a quick overview of what kind of happens in the adventure.
So spoiler warning.
Spoiler warning.
I'm going to set Sorokowski this. If you're planning to play it, stop now, but send your GM across to this episode if you want them to run it.
You start off as prisoners on a ship. You've been taken from various different islands. It has a very quick sort of brief history of what it is, and just a quick brief history about what happens in it. So there was a pirate king who took over one of the islands. It's been 60 years since their death, and now there's this sort of conflict with piracy and people being spread out, essentially.
Corin Archipelago.
The Corin Archipelago, yeah. And it talks about you can have people from here, here's a few bits and pieces, but it ultimately doesn't matter. But you start off on a ship, you are prisoners, and then there's a big storm, and eventually the ship is shipwrecked onto this island, and there are first sort of encounters that you have to get away from the final pirate that's sort of been left there. I will say, this is basically the first adventure. Is how do you deal with one person who is blind drunk on a beach, who insists on everything? And it does talk about the different ways people can go about it, but it does take a long-winded style. You could go fight the person. You could escape. You could just wait. You could do this. You could do that. And it's like, they're going to try and escape because they've been treated very poorly, again, through the prologue. It feels like, there's not much hope. What are you going to do?
I did like with that bit, it is my first encounter thing, which, as you say, does take a lot of time, but I think it does, in a way, I like that it doesn't say they will fight this person. Here's how to run a combat. It almost hints at they're going to try and sneak out, and there's ways to do that. And there's a time limit. If you really want to, you can model the sobering up of that pirate. I don't do that. Any time-related things in games, I throw out. I can't stand it. I cannot stand a time-related thing. I just don't know.
It just adds stuff to it. That's just another thing to worry about. Compared to other RPG systems like Blades in the Dark, which obviously has those clocks things that are progress, that makes sense because everything is time pressures. Here, just they have to do something. I think that's almost like a managed expectation thing to be say, move the plot along, please. Yeah. You're level 0. It's a desperate situation. You're on an island. I think towards the end of this particular episode talks about exposure and that you're going to get cold and stuff, which again, I hadn't really considered. But of course, you don't have much in terms of clothes there. You don't have any equipment per se, and you're exposed to the elements on this island, which is like part jungle, part hill, etc. And there isn't any shelters and stuff. So it's like, well, what do you have to do? You have to make a decision. Otherwise you're going to die out here. I do like that. I think rather than, because again, that's a timed thing where you go, right, for every hour they go out there, they're exposed, they take 1 hit point worth of damage, which can kill someone outright if they've only rolled a 1 for their hit point. But I would use them as a GM, both the sobering up of the pirate and the exposure, purely as if you've got those players who are not making a decision, you just go, right, well, he looks like he's had his big sick and now he's feeling a lot better. Tactical chunder on the beach.
Yeah, he's had a tactical one. Or a hop. Look at Viz's Profanosaurus for a hop. And he, you're starting, you've lost feeling in your hands and feet. Give the players that this is going to happen, so you better get a move on. But to actually time it, that doesn't feel very my first adventure, because you're saying to a GM, you should have a stopwatch with you, kind of thing. And it's like, don't bother. One criticism I do have with the module, and I might as well say it here, because it's a running theme through it, is it's very, and then the players will. Yes. And that's very a bit like, no, they won't. I know my players, they're not going to do that. There is advice for what happens if this, but there's not almost enough. it's often it's like, what if they try and build a raft? Oh shit! Oh god, I hadn't thought about that. It has a lot of guidance, but it's not foolproof. I would go through it and imagine yourself as a player and go, well, what would Rob do?
How would I get out of this? I guess because, like we said, like nowadays with D&D 5th edition, you get to a point where you're like, I feel indestructible.
Yes.
Like I have this and I have this. So here, you're level 0. You have at most 6 hit points if you're lucky. You as a player, like, well, what is my chances? Okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this. And there'll be, like you said, some foolhardy people going, I'm just going to
rush him kind of thing.
Yeah, and you're like, great.
The first pirate does D8 damage, so he can one-shot anyone in the party.
Yeah.
And that's the first guy. And, yes, he's easy to hit because he is drunk, but if he hits, he's going to bring you down. And even the goblins do D6 damage. Sorry, spoiler. There are goblins. They do
and orcs.
I'm actually having a look down the damage chart because we will go back to the plot.
Yeah.
But the back of this is just this wealth of handouts and guides, and it's brilliant. It's actually, I was looking at that, I was like, this is fantastic, including page 36 is just a chart effectively with every enemy you might find in each episode, with their stats, with hit point boxes written out. Amazing for like, it says goblin with spear, and you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pairs of hit boxes. Brilliant. There is no reason this format shouldn't be taken up into every module.
Every adventure. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, because it's just there. It's very small, and you could easily just print it out. Okay, because the amount of times I've gone, oh god, and then looking for stuff and all that sort of thing. I guess because maybe because these particular creatures, they don't have special attacks, or they're all sort of melee stuff, which is fine. But I was just like, oh, that makes it so much easier because then you're like, all right, tick, 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 it's this person. You don't have to have multiple bits of post-it notes or different sheets and stuff.
There's 6 goblins, I need to roll their hit dice, right? It's like, so here are the hit points for them. Prepared.
Let's continue talking about those handouts as well. So again, another big spoiler, there is an NPC later on that can give you information. So if you ask that, like, oh, well, here's the map this NPC draws compared to the DM's map, which is a little bit more detailed. And it's really fascinating because not only is it sort of drawn on basically a palm leaf, so it's actually a really cool map. It's not like a traditional sort of like
gridded squares or anything.
Square, exactly. And so it's not accurate for various reasons, which we'll go into. But it's like, I thought, that's really cool. Because again, most of the times I go, right, I'm going to draw my own map. Yeah. But actually, how often do your players nowadays ask you for a map? And do you have anything? Because it just says if they don't ask for it, don't give it to them. I'm like, but this is such a cool thing because it looks great as a result.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you can literally cut around it and then hand that to a player and be like, there you go. It does annoy me though, because in the module it says he writes it on parchment and then the picture's on a palm leaf.
That.
And I was like,
I was like, no, you go back through with your pen, it's a palm leaf. And that for me is quite cool because just that image of like, you are part of an island. Of course, why would this NPC that you rescue have stuff like this from where they are? I think one thing I do want to say right at the beginning, I sort of skipped over it a little bit. What I found interesting with this scenario, so obviously we've said it before, they start at level 0. At the end of this adventure, they should be just over level 1. They may have got gain experience. So they get experience through doing certain deeds and stuff, which is listed at the end of each mini adventure, essentially. Yes. What's interesting is that it talks about how the character's actions and attitudes determine what that character's class is, but more importantly, what each character's behavior is and how that determines alignment. And you, as the DM, get to decide that. You can give some suggestions and then talk with your player, like, how did you feel about this, this, and this? And if they think differently, you work with them to talk about that. I thought that's fascinating. It's almost like really a peer review about how you think your performance is.
It's very much a PDR, isn't it? And you there are character tracking forms at the back of the thing again, and you can put, it says all the alignments, lawful, neutral, chaotic, good, neutral, evil, and you can put a little tick by each one, each time you think, oh, that was it. Like those Star Wars RPGs on the Xbox where the Knights of the Old Republic, where it's like, you've earned a dark side point, you've earned a light side point. You can do that. You can be like, okay, maybe you'll tell the players, maybe you won't. Or you'll go, that was a very assassin-y thing to do, or that was a very fightery thing to do. You could let the characters do their own, and then you could, mix up at the end and go, right, well, I think you acted in an incredibly evil manner. And they might be like, no, that was incredibly good. And you'd be like, oh, okay.
Well, the sheet says otherwise, you know.
And I think that's an interesting way because it's an interesting party creation because you might end up at the end of the adventure with like a chaotic evil person and a lawful good person. So do they just end up stabbing each other up at the end of it anyway? But no, I think that's great. I really like that peer review. And again, there's a handout at the back that you can just sit and track with, which is, again,
very helpful. And I think this is definitely a feature of older modules and stuff. It gives out that experience to go, oh, for this encounter, you get this and all that sort of thing. But again, that's very helpful to be like, oh, so they bypass this particular thing. Interesting. We'll translate that into, like you said, the moral alignments in some way. I think for me, the only thing I would do is make sure I'd manage that expectation up front. So it could be quite a surprise. It's like, oh, well, I didn't, that whole sort of thing going, hey, your actions and what you do in the same will determine what it is at the end, just letting you know. You don't have to be like, if you do evil things, you're going to be evil.
Yeah, I think so. Just make it aware that you're being watched.
Yeah, because there is, again, spoiler as it is, there is a goddess on this island as well that can see their stuff. We
will get back to the plot, I do promise you. I actually genuinely would love to see this redone. I think this is a very good kit. This would be a perfect free RPG thing from Wizards. It's just really nice, even down to little touches, like there's only 2 NPCs. That's actually great. Because if you're a new GM and you've got a list of 12 NPCs to run, you're just like, I'm done, I'm out, I check out. There's 2. One's very important. One is literally put in there as the voice of the GM. Like, it's literally like, quest help, use this other NPC as the voice. She gives a little bit of plot help, but she can be one going just like, it's raining. We should probably
I'm cold.
I'm cold. Which is brilliant, because that's the kind of thing you forget about. Because if you do leave 12 idiots on a beach, a lot of them are going to just die. We've all watched Love Island. Actually,
I mean, they're in a villa. I think you're thinking of Survivor. But yes, I agree.
But I'm only saying that because I'm going through the packet of stuff at the back where you've got character portraits, pre-gen characters, little pictures of them, terrible artwork. But it's just this whole little package that you go for. But do you want to get back on the plot? Let's get back on.
Well, I quickly want to say that the one thing I did thought was interesting, it says that if you do certain things, then you might get locked into character classes. So it talks about spellcasters, for example, which I thought was interesting because obviously it's like you start to read a scroll that you find or you start to feel the magic in it. And that's like, oh, you've opened up this pathway to you. But then as a result, it closes off, you're not going to be these anymore, which I thought was interesting. I don't know if I would do that personally, because I think I would like to give that choice to players at the end. But again, in first edition, I know obviously it definitely is more like once you've locked into something, that's it. You don't get maybe higher than a certain level if you're a spellcaster like this. It makes sense for this edition. I think now because of this we've got multiclassing. You could be anyone and everything, and you can move stuff around. It doesn't matter. But that's the only thing I thought that was interesting to still have certain rules for stuff, which again the players might not be aware of. And as soon as they go, oh, I picked a magic scroll. Oh, you can read it. By the way, now you are a wizard. And you're like, oh, but I've got 2 actors on my back, and oh well, great, I'm a muscle wizard, that sort of thing.
In a way, it almost feels programmed like a computer game. There's lots of elements to it where you feel like, yes, this could be the beginning of a computer game. I'm going to give my grognard opinion here. Yes. I hate multiclassing. I hate it.
I hate multiclassing.
It's rubbish. Make a decision, get up the fence. Just make a goddamn decision. I hate it.
Just switch to one career and then just switch to a different career. You don't do bits in between.
Create a new character. Just do something else. I hate it. I
Different things for different people. I agree. Just because I get to a point where certainly with 5th edition, because you have like, okay, so you're multiclassing, so now you could have different hit die for different classes. I'm like, oh, just have it so it goes to the highest one. Otherwise it just gets very bitty. Compared to in the past where we're like, oh, we're having a whole Saturday where we're downstairs in somebody's basement playing it. Now it's like, we have 2 hours on a Thursday and I'm tired.
Yes. I can't be bothered calculating my hit dice for my wizard aspect of my druid, wizard, barbarian.
Yeah.
And you're just like, that's just shit. I think it's the kind of thing that plays into that idea of modern D&D being a bit player fantasy to a point where it's like, I'll just do what I want. I've created Superman or Batman or something, and you're like, all right, cool. Anyway, this is a discussion for another time.
It is a discussion for another time, but I think it's an interesting one to have. So you've managed to thwart your pirate's captor. And the next chapter is that you hear noises and you sort of go up a very interesting sort of incline. Again, it talks about like different ways they can approach this. However you do it, you look down and you see there is a fight happening between some orcs and some goblins. And what's interesting in this chapter, it does a play-by-play account of who wins.
Yeah.
I have never seen that before.
No, that's really good because it saves you having to go, oh shit, I need to roll some dice. Or I'm just going to make it up. No, it literally says who dies on what turn of combat if the players do nothing. And I think that is brilliant. I genuinely think that's a really good way of doing it because the players don't know. But you know, and you're just going, all right, tick that one off. And it's really good. It immediately puts players into a world where actually they matter, but they don't matter. Things will happen without them and gets that into their mindset immediately that if they don't do anything, the world's still going to keep turning. They're not just going to stand in a holding animation waiting for them to come up kind of thing. Yeah, like a fight. They will fight and one side will win and then they've got a little bit of dominance on the island from just that. So not making a choice is a choice in this because if you don't do anything, one side will win this skirmish and there's not many of either side on this island, so they've now got a little upper hand and as a GM you can play on that.
That idea of not making a decision is a decision. It feels very Telltale Games-esque where you've got a time limit of sorts and you can choose stuff because it talks about, they can go and fight them straight away. I mean, it's suicide, but they can do that. There's boulders where they are, so they can push them down and then cause big, more distraction and stuff. And I think the real reason is because this minor character we talked about is a captive to the orcs and you can see them and it's almost like you're at the top. You see them at the bottom of this cliff. You see the orcs fighting, losing, and then you see the goblins. And it does say, like, what do you do? Because it says what happens if they don't do anything. The goblins eventually kill the orcs, take that person, and you're like, cool, that NPC isn't in this adventure anymore. And then what to do if that happens? Because obviously they're a big source of information. And it's fascinating, I think, because it's such an interesting thing. Because like you don't have any weapons, you're still 6 hit points. Do you go and interfering or go and help that person? So I just thought it's quite an interesting quandary, I guess, because obviously for me, I was like, fuck them.
And that is covered in the appendix at the back. It says what to do without them. And I just think that by having an encounter that the players can choose to engage with, it sort of opens up one of the, it's almost in a tutorial to RPGing that actually there's going to be times where you do nothing. There's going to be times where you observe. And that's fine as well. Not everything has to be your story. If this encounter said, you see this fight, and no matter what happens, the players are seen and are drawn into the fight, that would be a bit of a shame because then what you're programming there is a combat encounter. Whereas this really gets down. If this is the first RPG that people are playing, it gives that idea of, this is a game where you can choose to do what you want to do. And here's an example why that matters.
Every decision they make matters, more so than I've seen in any other introductory adventure. Because I guess, like you said, it's trying to get them into roleplay, trying to get them to understand these things. So maybe you let some bits by the wayside. But at every point, it matters when they come off the ship. Do they try and get rid of that pirate captive? If not, that pirate captive comes back later on. Or if they capture them, what happens? They'll try and escape, and then it's like next to next to next. So there's a lot of factors, which again, may be a bit overwhelming if you're really, really new to this sort of thing. But at the same time, it's interesting and it's, really enjoy it.
I think at least what they've done is not introduce too many factors because really you've got, as I say, 2 NPCs, 1 pirate enemy, orc enemies, goblin enemies, later enemies, and a god to deal with. That's not a huge amount. That's only 6 factors, and the orcs and the goblins are very transparent. They have their motives. They're going to do their thing. They're on pre-programmed. One of the NPCs is literally just another survivor, and after the first encounter, she disappears into the background effectively. So you don't have a huge amount to track on. So I would love to run this. Reading it, I was like, and I'm a very experienced GM, and I'm not saying that in a braggy way, just I am.
No, it's just fact.
It's fact. But I was like, this looks fun to run. Like, I was looking at it and thinking, this has got some really interesting bits. I like that it's got a limited setting that's barely fleshed out, but then there's enough at the back that gives you a bit more. If you want to keep playing in the archipelago, here's some more. That immediately you start thinking, all right, cool, because this just says, this is an island, and there's not much on it, but you can start playing with that. What type of trees are on it? Well, let's say there's fir trees on it. You've added to that immediately and added to where this is going to be and stuff. It's a really fun sandbox to play with without too much to worry about. I really think this could be an excellent new Minds of Findelver kind of thing. Like, hey, run this. Really do run this.
Yeah. Because with the Lost Minds of Fandelver, which is now, if you've got a D&D Beyond account, I believe you can get that for free.
Right, because it's like 100 years old now.
It's not 100 years old, but yeah, they've got the new starter set coming out, so I think they're making it free. The intro to that is essentially, oh, this person's gone missing, go find them, and then
go do it.
Yeah, go do it. And so there's no stakes in it, whereas this one is. But should we pick the path that you rescue this old man, as it's described, someone called Keystake? They did this little story about how they, were a part of this sort of, I don't want to say entourage, but they were part of the court of the Pirate King. It's interesting because it instantly sets up like this person is like grateful that you've helped them, but then as you proceed to go through the next couple of episodes, it's like something's not all right. So essentially, you start off by going, "Oh, but you've rescued me. Come, I've got a place at the temple." Blah blah blah.
Yes.
So you all sort of make your way over there, and then proceeds the third chapter where it's a long description about all these different rooms. There's not much in them.
Yeah, which surprised me. I did like how it said, as I'll read it verbatim, before launching into the first episode of the adventure, let's look at the island as a whole, because now the characters have a character to talk to pump for information. And that's actually really nice that the GM can go, oh yeah, this is the time where they're going to start finding out. So let's find this out. This new character, by the way, when I read them, the first thing I thought about was, is it Herman Toothrot, who is the guy you find on Monkey Island?
Yes.
The hermit on Monkey Island. I was like, yeah, you've obviously got to run him exactly like that.
Yep. Absolutely. I think this could be really good as a Monkey Island, like just stuff with Monkey Island in this whole thing, because that would be
Definitely.
so cool.
If you're going to have music playing, get the Monkey Island themes playing in the background, just because, yes, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting in this temple thing is that eventually they'll settle down. There's like, oh, exposure's not a thing anymore. But there's talk about if you go to certain like places, like the huge big temple room, again, some really interesting descriptions, some beautiful descriptions there of things being tarnished and stuff like that. And this is the key thing, is that if somebody is showing like sadness or wishes to clean things up, who's like says, oh, it's such a terrible thing that's happened to this wonderful temple. Very specific things, which I don't think your players would ever do.
No, but I think you can just be a bit nicer. If someone takes a dump in the corner, that's one thing compared to someone just like resetting a chair. Yeah, because this place has been raided by the orcs, hasn't it? They've come in looking for treasure and not found anything.
There is like a statue of the goddess that this temple is dedicated to, which is all sort of stained and tarnished. And then later on in the evening, once everyone's asleep, this person's been picked, who is shown like the most worthy in sort of quotation marks, is woken by a vision of this statue talking to them, which then eventually it's a little bit of a winded things where I'm just going to talk to them, or I trust everyone else. Okay, everyone else can talk to me now. I guess because it's to stop that metagaming perhaps, or to stop people like waking up and like, it's this or whatever.
I think though what that does do is, we always talk about when we're running games for people, give everyone that spotlight moment. It could be quite a good one for a player who hasn't done much so far and you feel like isn't getting to do stuff. You could go, okay, because it does say, if people are worthy, pick them, and then I think it goes down to whoever has the highest wisdom or something. It sort of gives you specific, but I think as a GM you could definitely go, actually, you've not done a huge amount and you've not been a dick, so it's you. And then that gives that character who 2 hours ago in the game was just a slave, you could start thinking, oh, maybe I want to be a cleric. Maybe I want to be a cleric of this god. Immediately you're sort of building that little rapport. Yeah. So no, you're wrong, Fiona. Is what I'm saying there.
No, but I like that. It doesn't tell you that in the thing. It gives you more prescriptive video game like stuff. Whereas I think that's really cool as a GM, just be like, I think my only caveat to that, the only thing I'd add on to that is that then only they get to talk to the goddess. Make it that it is a proper spotlight moment, so that then they have to give this information to the people, because what the goddess says is that I hate what's happened to this island and my temple because of this thing. I'm going to destroy it, but because you guys are here, I'll destroy it tomorrow.
Which is very, very Greek goddess of it. Have the other players dream that they're watching the conversation.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So they can't interact, but you don't then have to have that. What did the goddess say to you?
What happened last night?
I recount what just happened. Then they have that moment of character talking. And what you can then do for each of the players is the goddess might appear as a different aspect.
Ooh, yeah,
It might be the goddess Athena, but to an half orc, they don't believe in Athena, so it's the goddess whatever. That way, everyone gets that supernatural element, but that one player gets to be the voice of the party.
Mm-hmm. The other thing quickly to mention about this temple thing is that there is an encounter in it. We're doing hand gestures to indicate, yes, there is a ghoul, which, as if it's hand gestures to say, it's a ghoul, which doesn't appear until later on. And it's one of those things where I'm like, it's a very cool idea. I really like it as a GM because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna surprise them. But as a player, you wake up in the middle of the night and then you're attacked by something. It's a ghoul. And the only person that knows about it is this NPC, Keystake, who knows about it but doesn't say anything. I would maybe rewrite this to be a bit like, there's clearly something else here. Like you go, oh, something moves, and you're you go and investigate it, because otherwise it feels there's no preamble for the players to be like, by the way, it's not safe here.
The only way would be if you go into the kitchen and look up the chimney. Yeah. Then you can see them. But no, you want to leave gnawed bones around the place. You want to have a goblin that's been hung up to be eaten kind of thing.
Yeah, there's talk about meat hooks in the kitchen with nothing in them, right? So you think, then that looks fresh.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the ghoul turns up and attacks, and it'll run through your party. Because it gets 2 rounds of killing, it will run through your party. I would run the ghoul way more like a golem. Like it's actually quite interested. It is evil. Yeah. And it's waiting to attack, but it's much more playing with its prey. That kind of more. I would definitely, this ghoul, we always talk about use tropes, particularly when you're playing with new players, have Gollum turn up. Yeah. And then it doesn't even need to be a ghoul. It can just be someone who was been on this island for 100 years kind of thing, I really think you can play a lot with this. It is named Ghoul. It has no rules in terms of undead or anything like that, so you can just do what you want. I'd rename this as a Wretch. Yes. And then you can just run with it. Maybe this is someone who was a shipwrecked who besmirched the goddess, and she has given them a long life, but a horrible life, as a punishment. So that's a fun little thing. So that's a warning there of don't piss off the goddess, because it tells you if you do, you actually suffer. Don't use a ghoul, actually. A ghoul is very boring. Use this as something more. Let's play with this a little bit, but also give the players a hint, because otherwise, it's like, you've done all this stuff, you've met the goddess, you're all dead. Yeah. Unfortunately, you all got eaten in the night.
Yeah, because it does talk about the goddess giving some help in some way if the battle is going really, really badly. But I think maybe it's just like, this episode's just been more of a talky exploration-y thing, but there's no, because it does talk about you don't do random encounters on this thing. It's very much sparse, this island. So I think it's we need to put something in. Either it's a ghoul of some sort, or if that captive from before, the pirate they come in the night instead and use them instead. Which that for me makes more narrative sense and is a bit more satisfying, but only if they pick that path, right? So
yeah, if the players want something to do, throw in an encounter, but make it fair. This one doesn't seem fair. It really does. Yeah,
it feels a bit shit. Yeah, after all that time.
If you have the pirate come back, he bangs the door open, swearing and cursing, so it gives the players that time, and then they can ambush him. Really give them something to do, but just have them murdered in the night is rubbish.
You've had this goddess thing, you've got this now time limit that the island's going to be destroyed and ripped apart by a storm within the next day. Your new best buddy, Keystake, says, we can get off the island, as I know something about that, but you might need some magical items. I know some way that we can get that. We can go to the Manor of the Sea King. And you're like, interesting, because this is the part where I'm like, I don't know about this, because this essentially, big spoiler, is that Keystake gets very jealous and because was part of this Sea King's court and doesn't like what's happened to things, to the point where when the Sea King fell, along with his partner and son and stuff like that, he basically wished for them to forever be preserved, and as a result they have been under this manor house. But obviously when you wish for something that big, it doesn't always go right. So it's just find it really interesting, because at no point Does it like, it feels like, oh, well, now you're taking the treasures. Well, I hate you now, and I'm going to kill you and trap you and stuff like that. I feel like, again, maybe a little bit, again, we've talked about this, about rewriting it slightly, like maybe the only way off this island is that he needs help with something, and the adventure's helping. He goes, well, now you've helped me, I'm now going to kill you, or try and sneak away, essentially.
Yeah, the switch is too fast.
Mm-hmm.
It is really just like, oh, right, there was no way we could have done that. Cheers. Yeah,
because towards the end, he's not getting off the island. He's sort of consumed by this, like, well, I love the Sea King. And even though he will be told, like, oh, well, this island's being torn into shreds and all that sort of thing, you think to yourself, you can leave. And I don't know, it just feels like, I don't know what's the word for it, but
it's very crudely written, I think, in terms of that. Here's a character who will do a thing, and I'm not really going to explain why in a very good way. It was very just like, I need a traitor. Okay, they're the traitor, and why?
It isn't a good reason to betray the party, because it doesn't come across as selfish, because obviously they save him, but he just doesn't like them using the magic items. And I don't know. I guess for me, because it's been 60 years. Maybe it's this idea, like, oh, well, the island and living out here is it's everything's changed, and this whole maybe he's insane. And you're like, it doesn't. I'm always one for intelligent villains rather than like this trope of like, oh well, I'll just betray you because I can. Because he would know. This person would know, like, that if you've got 5 to 6 characters, even at level 0, they're still gonna. If you betray them, it's very hard to like take those people on. Like, you take on 6 people in general, it's quite hard, even in an argument.
His main motivation should be the love of his former liege.
Yes.
So yes, the reason he won't leave, say, is because he wants to be with them for eternity, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You want to play them like, and this is an odd reference to make for this character. So you've got this horrible sweaty hobo guy. You know Elsa Schneider in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade? The Nazi woman? Yes. She betrays Indy because she loves the Grail. She isn't for the party, she's for the Grail. And she's happy to betray the Nazis at the end for the Grail, but in the end, spoiler for a very old film, she's consumed by it. That's almost what you want to do with this guy. Have him, that his love and the fact he's been separated from his liege for 60 years is what is driving him. So later on, when the liege returns and the players have to, fight them, really.
To escape.
That would be the time that he would finally crack. You would start showing it when it says, and now he's mad. That's actually when I would start and now you show he's starting to become erratic. And then when that encounter happens, that's when you go, right, and then he decides for the love of his lord, kind of thing.
Moving on a little bit, but when you get to that stage, he does this whole monologue, which is a really good monologue. I was really enjoying reading that, because it's the idea that you're just talking to a player, you're just chatting away, and then it's very real, like, oh, he's not good. And I'm just like, that you're talking to someone, and then suddenly all the other players are like, wait, what did you just say? Oh, all right. Zip, swords come out, let's go. But obviously before we get that, he says, like, well, these magic items, these places, they're in the manor house, but they're in like a dungeon, and I know the only way in. And of course, this manor house, again, interestingly put, it's like, it's almost like a H or an I put on its side. And on one side, the goblins are encamped, and on the other side, the orcs are encamped. So, and they meet in the middle when they do their patrols and stuff. And again, it goes into a lot of detail about like what patrols are happening and all that sort of thing. And I thought that was just quite interesting, because I guess for me, it's like, obviously, you don't want it to be like, oh, there's fighting all the time. So it sort of is more driven. It's this part I see it as the sneaking around, going to rooms, trying to find stuff, because you have ways of detecting these magic items that will help you out in the long run. It feels like the dungeon above, before you go into the dungeon below, this H manor house, essentially.
I thought that was really well done, because actually, when I first read it, I was like, this is stupid. So half the manor house is covered in goblins and the other half is covered in orcs, and they hate each other, because I don't think we actually went into it, but basically the orcs and the goblins are 2 separate pirate groups, and they've both landed at separate times on this island, because they've gone, look, there's a temple and a manor house, that's going to be full of booty. And they've landed, and now they're just in protracted skirmishes. And so I was like, well, this is stupid. Why would they both be in the same house? They would have killed each other by now. But it literally has a section called Peculiar Behaviour of the Orcs and Goblins. And it says that the reason this isn't happening, like, your players will ask why this isn't happening. So here's the reason why. it's because they have a sort of piratey code going on.
Yes.
That actually all-out war isn't acceptable. There can be clashes between patrols, which is what you saw earlier.
Mm-hmm.
There can be the odd stab in the dark, but a whole war isn't the done thing. That, in itself, gives a layer of texture to those orcs and goblins.
Yes.
These are no longer mindless orcs and mindless goblins. These are pirate crews with their own codes, their own ethics, and their own motivations. That's brilliant. To go back to the Mines of Viledel, and I'm not ragging on that, but here is a cave full of goblins. Goblins bad, kill goblins. It's the first encounter, right? Yeah. Whereas this is like, oh, these guys are just doing their piratey thing. Let's just leave it. Let's just not.
Yeah. Well, it adds that texture to it, and it gives that something interesting for the DM to do if the players are listening and paying attention. Because we all love those NPCs. So yeah, I can imagine they sort of need to go, parlay, and like, what? We were here first, and that sort of rabble, discussion. And I think you could leave that as an interesting thing. But obviously, if they go rushing in and try and kill them, and they're like, oh well, you lose that information. That's a shame. And completely like that Mines of Viledel thing where it's supposed to be like, here is this information, and you can fight your way to the end. Here's the goblin boss, gives you the information, you kill the goblin boss, and then you move on to the next area. This is very hard to kill everyone because you're level 0.
And there's loads of them.
And there's loads of them. Like it talks about how many people are on watch at any one time, and if you go further out, they've got these ships, but also there's so many patrols and stuff. Yeah. So instantly, to me, this sort of manor house, it is the sneaking mission. It's the hitman type thing where you're just gonna go. So it talks about like if you happen to go down a corridor and you see groups turning around, like you could duck into a room because they don't care about you. Ultimately, they care about this is our bit. This is our As players, like, oh shit, fuck, quick. Get into don't see us, and of course they don't, because they're like, forget what we saw in the shadows. What the fuck are you doing here? This is our corridor.
We've strayed our scent here. You can't be here.
How dare you?
And I do think that's really good because, again, if you're going to take this adventure on you're going to use this as a campaign launch, you've got these 2 piratey crews now that are NPC factions. Brilliant.
You can really put richness into them as a result. I really like that. So say you find your way through all these different rooms and stuff, and you get to the room with the IKEA bookshelf, and the whole thing about this is the bit I do quite like, because obviously the orcs and goblins, they're fighting, but if they hear something, they're gonna go check it out. So this idea that it takes forever to open up this secret panel and stuff, and you have to count the rounds and stuff, and then eventually you get through and you get down to the bottom, and then Key State just sort of like, don't worry about it. I've blocked off the entrance for now. And it talks about like, they'll be like, well, we're going to get down there. Because the whole point of this sort of manor for the orcs and the goblins is to find treasure. They want treasure. And they've scoured all the rooms. That's why they talks about the temple being ruins, all that sort of thing. So when they're like, oh, we found the secret door, it's blocked currently. Well, we're going to spend the next 6 hours digging our way down. And so again, it's that time pressure about something's coming and you don't know your way out. That's the only way into this particular dungeon. You don't know your way out. And it talks about like somebody could die if the bookcase falls on you.
We've got to think about it. Like, don't just say we pull it open. You say, well, how are you going to do it? And if they say, well, I'll pull it down, then all right, you're an idiot.
Like, cool. Death by hardback. That's how it's going.
That's that you're introducing a new facet to RPGs there of RPGs is dangerous if you're not careful. You're not saying, oh, you've opened it, lol, it fell on you and you're dead. Like that's rubbish. But if someone literally says, I'm standing in front of it and pulling it, then okay, they've made that decision. But yeah, it really, each encounter just adds another little bit of, and here's how to play an RPG, and here's elements of RPGs. And I do think that is a real strength for this module. So they're through. They're down. They're into the catacombs. Yes,
they're into the catacombs. They've been betrayed by Key State right at the bottom for no reason. You've dealt with him in some way.
Yes, please see earlier discussion.
And then essentially it sort of talks about there's these catacombs. You've got the king and queen and a boat essentially, and it's like get out of this island, get onto the boat. But as soon as you start interacting with anything, suddenly a twist that we all saw coming. the king and queen rise and then start attacking because they're protecting this thing and anything that interacts with them. Which again, you could make it as a proper horror thing. You're like, they've not aged. That's the main thing. Key Stake was like, I want them to be preserved in a certain way, and that's why they're in this magic. But now they're undead. They're zombie-like as well. So you've got orcs and goblins coming from one side, like trying to get their way down, and then you've got the king and queen zombie form with various weapons coming towards you, and you're just trying to push out this boat into the sort of little exit just to get out. I feel like this could be a proper rush because it's like, again, do you stop? Do you go? Because there's treasure here as well. So it's like, it's that sort of, again, it feels very much like, Pirates of the Caribbean, the sort of, like you said, Indiana Jones was like, come on, we must go. It's like, getting stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you've got the orcs and goblins, you've got the undead, and the island's going to start breaking apart. Because you can, if you really want to add another time pressure, you start having splits appearing in the catacombs and rubble falling because the goddess is going to destroy the island, but it might take a bit of time to start that destruction. So this is the cinematic ending. This is really when you blow your special effects budget.
Lens glare everywhere, even though you're in a dungeon.
I love that the boat is behind the wall, because that is very true of ancient cultures. And it's like that bit in Moana where she discovers the fleet behind the wall. Yeah. You can very much play on that moment of, here is your salvation. And that's when things start going wrong. And it's a great ending. It's a really fun ending because it isn't a big combat. In fact, if you do a big combat, you're going to die. Yeah. You will be slapped down. It's a get the hell out of here and survive, which is a very piratey way to finish, really, of jumping on a boat and sailing into the sunset. But it's as you say, though, there's going to be a player character that makes that run for that rod of whatever spell casting, and they're going to get hit by a block. You want them to get hit by a block and squashed. Like,
there's expensive dinnerware, there's arms, chainmail, that sort of thing. Because you can imagine going, no, it's all mine. And rubble coming on, like, no, Steve.
Again, that last scene of Last Crusade where she's trying to grab the golden cup and everything's coming down, and
exactly. That could be really cool. Actually, I quite like that image from it. And then once you're out, it's like, okay, your quest help, Melisandre. She sort of goes, well, great, thanks guys, just pop me back to my dad's and I will give you some money. And then you can continue on there, so like dropping her off so that she can go back to running the business, and again maybe another story hook or connection from there. That's kind of it in a nutshell. I think for me, I agree with you from the beginning. There's a lot, and the 6 episodes seems quite a lot because it feels like, to me, this should be a one shot. This should be
this is a con game. This could be a really good con game.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, but as a result, there's quite a lot in it. Like but I don't know what element I would get rid of, per se.
I would reduce down the manor house. It's fun, but I literally would be, you get in and you're led to the catacomb entrance really fast. Yeah. Like I would, that's the one, I think that's the unnecessary. I think it's a fun element, I really do. And if you're running it as a 2-shot, I would split.
Like at the end of the temple.
At the end of the temple, or just, they see the manor house on the hill next time. That's where I would split it and then run it properly. But if you're trying to fit this into a con or a one shot, the manor house can be pretty much forgotten. In fact, in a way, you don't even need the orcs and goblins in it. They've already been here, they've already raided it, they've already had a look around. Yeah. They see you going in, maybe, so you do have that pursuit element, but you don't need it to be a conflict ground. You can just leave it, really. Yeah. And that's the element I would cut out, I think, if I was running this as a one-shot.
Yeah, I agree. Because like I said, it has the thing of like temple, manor house, dungeon, and I just think like we just reduce it down. Like I said, everything's been raided, so there's not much here for you to do. Yeah. It's which kind of, I guess, kind of sucks for players. Like, I want to find stuff out, and you're like, but there's a story waiting. You don't have time. We're gonna the Judge Judy sort of like, come on, let's get going.
Yeah, you could cut the manor and maybe expand the ghoul in the temple a bit more if they really want a little encounter like that. But because the catacomb should be a fast one, really. But that's what I would do.
I think I would actually get rid of the captor at the beginning, actually, so that they're stuck there. Because I guess once you're on the island, just the cold, the exposure is enough. Yeah. But I guess the problem is obviously not the problem, but like as you said, is that this is like my first encounter. What do they do? But I think if you really push for time, maybe like you've got to run this in 2 hours. You're like, let's get them going.
That's true. Actually, he isn't necessary as an encounter purely. It's a bit of more fluff.
It's fluff, but now you see I'm thinking about it, I do think it's important fluff because it's kind of like, well, you need to make a decision. And this is where you start to have like, oh, we're going to sneak away. Oh, well, I want to have my revenge because you battered the this other person, etc.
You could do the second encounter with the conflict. You could start it a few rounds in.
Yeah.
You could actually have it that as you get there, it's the end of the conflict, and you've only got 2 or 3 rounds to act if you really want to stop anything. And if not, it will just play to its end. So you could actually also reduce that down. I want to go through this now with a pen. And I'm saying this not as a criticism. This is purely a let's run this in 2 hours. What would I do?
What would you do?
I think it would still be playable.
Yeah.
And a lot of fun.
This could be like going back to the beginning of this, where we sort of compared it to Dungeon Crawl Classic. I think because it talks about like what happens if your character dies, and it goes, well, obviously there's lots more people on the ship that were taken off at the beginning, and you could play one of those people right up until you get into the manor house, and then it goes, that's it. I think we just do that Dungeon Crawl Classic of having a group of like people and then just like, oh, that person's gone, oh, that person's gone, oh, that person's gone. And I do like the idea that you could run it for Dungeon Crawl Classic, because the one thing I learnt about it when I was reading it for our episode is that you're going to put your best character in quotation marks first, and then they're going to die, and then the second best, and to the point where the person that survives is the weakest person. But I like that. It makes it a real proper survival horror story. So I think if everyone had 4 characters that they can just do, like, again, the combat style, like, the others are like sort of hiding away or like trying to get away or something like that, and then, oh, that person's gone. Okay, the next person sees this opportunity to go and do something.
Either for using Dungeon Crawl Classics or D&D, because the character creation takes moments, really. Yeah. You can then keep the deadliness of you wake up and Bob's being torn to pieces by a ghoul. And you just be like, oh, God.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There was a bit of trivia I saw, which was like, oh, yeah, we wanted to know what people wanted in the next supplement, and people really wanted level 0 characters. And I'm like, I don't know if I'd want that. But I think on top of that, it's not just for brand new people to D&D, it's for those veteran, in quotation mark, players, experienced players who want a challenge. I don't know, there's always something about D&D going, I've done everything I could possibly want with D&D, I need more challenges, and it's going to be that you're Session 0 in a loincloth and a club. This is the Elden Ring of D&D.
I'm going to roll. I'm just going to do lots of rolls. As I say, I keep saying this, I would love to see this redone. I don't think it needs redoing particularly, but I'd love to see it produced as a, hey, here is a how to play an RPG, because I think it's spot on. There's stuff that can get cut out, stuff that can be condensed or expanded. And as I say, it has its old 80s philosophy of, and then they are attacked by a ghoul. But I think it's spot on. I really do. I think it's a really good, I really enjoyed reading it. I think it's full of artwork that's fun, because it's not just cut and paste artwork, it's pictures of the pre-generated players' characters running around the manor house, running around the catacombs, seeing the orcs and goblins. So if you really want to, you can cut those pictures out and show them to your players. Yeah. It's I really want to run this. I genuinely really want to play this one. It's really fun.
Ultimately, I completely agree. It's short and simple, really simple idea, which you could do a lot with, and definitely something you could do, like you said, for a con, for a one shot, or if you really want to take it slow, you like use it as another introduction for another system. Like obviously, I know we talked about Dungeon Crawl Classics, making it sort of really, really random. I can see this Black Hack. I was thinking, Quest would be another one if you wanted to make it super fantasy-esque, all that sort of thing. So it's one of those ones where you're like, this could work for quite a number of things, and that makes me quite happy actually, that seeing introductory adventures which aren't predetermined or predefined by certain rules, because you could get to the end and go, okay, here's what we think could work, and then you take that to your relevant system that you want to do. So overall, really good one. Double thumbs up. I think my only other last edit is I wouldn't use orcs and goblins, change them for this, but purely just literally cosmetic changes, kobolds and bugbears, just something to make it a little bit more D&D as opposed to and fantasy. It's literally the only change I would make. And I agree with that, because I think orcs and goblins are always the go-to, your low-level characters, it's goblins, and it's like, it does feel very tropey in that front. But at least you're not punching rats. Rob, thank you so much for spending your time talking to me about a level 0 adventure. Is there anything you'd like to promote? Is there stuff you're up to that we can find on the internet? Oh no, damn! I literally thought about this as well. I thought, if Fiona's going to ask me about this, so I should have something prepared. No, so I mentioned this on the last podcast, but my Warhammer podcast, Realm of Fire, is going through changes. We are going to do a joint thing with Darker Days Radio as a relaunch, so there's going to be more hosts and more content, because at the moment there's 2 of us. It's sort of relying on us being available, and there's an Atlantic Ocean between us.
So we're basically coming into a way to try and get more content and more products. So we haven't released much this year, but this is coming back.
Nice.
So Realm of Fire, keep your eye on that. It's been in hiatus. It is coming back. And I still want to do some more RPG podcasting. I've recently been on Full Metal RPG, talking about FKR, Free Kriegspiel, Revolution role-playing. And actually, I'm now putting my money where my mouth is and playing a game of Tolus based in that. But other than that, no, been quite quiet. That's it, really. Sorry.
No, it's good. And I would definitely check out that FKR thing because I've listened to half of it because you sent it to me and I really enjoyed it. It was very, very interesting. Well, that's amazing news about Darkest Age Radio as well. So I'm very excited for you on that front. In terms of where, that's the other podcast that I run. So What Am I Rolling? Twice monthly RPG one-shot podcast. That's always going very well. Doing a finger pointing now. Numenera is coming out today of recording. I know. I thought I'd let you know, Rob, because obviously Rob is very kind to GM that for us. So that is finally coming out. Part 1 is coming out. We've had lots of dancing moves now, which the listeners at home can't see, but we've also had lots of interviews out. So if you're interested in those systems, so like we've got stuff from Merkborg, we've got stuff from Death in Space, Ruins at Symbaroum was the latest one we talked about, but we also do a whole bunch of solo RPGs, multiple RPGs, lots of improvising and all that sort of thing. So if you're interested in finding out more like that, check it out. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy doing it. And
fun podcast.
Oh, shucks. Just because you're on it a few times. It's,
they're the best episodes.
Of course. And then finally, we have our offer code at Third Space Gaming, your friendly local game store in Burnley. If you want to get 10% off your first order, just type in the offer code DNBC into checkout, and you can get them on anything. Now, I'm sure they do more RPG books now. If you want to do some pre-order for the Radiant Citadel, which should be coming out in the next month or so, try it out there. But there's terrain, there's dice, there's all sorts. And just pop in and say hello, because they're very, very lovely. And they're getting back to in-person gaming as well, which is always wonderful. Because as I've discovered, because I've recently just come back from UK Games Expo, running games in person, it's a lot of fun. I've missed it, but it's just a little bit different to online playing games. But, I've really enjoyed my time, and it was a lot of fun.
That sounds like you're going to die.
This is me going, I am now signing off for final time. But
this is Fiona, last survivor of the Where podcast, signing off.
And then just like screeching and static, and then the credits roll.
Yeah.
Well, until next time, friends, thank you so much for listening, and we will speak to you, hear to you. Thumbs up. See you next time. See you
later. Stay hydrated.
Stay hydrated. Bye.